Hello, dear class. A lovely bright morning, may it last, I'm not convinced it's going to, that I'm gazing out upon. Have I shown you the view? I think I have, probably more than once. That's the view that I see as I speak to you, and it's our back garden with a pool on the right that's bright green, the water, and a bit of lawn and a bit of swamp and a bit of low pine saplings and then tall pine trees and blue sky. So if you saw any of that, I don't know if any of it would be in focus. That gives you a sense of what I'm looking at. And yes, the green water is not much good. We need our pool man, a brilliant, lovely guy called Michael, a Czech immigrant, a dear friend by now after he has managed to make our pool work okay for the last 3 or 4 years. Previously, it was a disaster. So there it is, that sunny view. And now I want to say a few words before we leave the secret scripture behind. Many of you have written in answers to the final quiz, excellent answers, and I'm looking forward to the rest, and I'm hoping this might be an encouragement or a pointer or two about fulfilling that quiz. I could give you the answer, I suppose, but the answers, I don't know that that's much use. It is an open book quiz, so I'm sure you can find those answers. However, I think the thing I'd like you to remember about this book is not only that it gives you a panorama of Ireland that is always in our thoughts if we are English speakers, because it is the foundry of our poetry and our poetic speech. That Ireland, there are so many descendants, sons and daughters of Ireland amongst us, that we ought to be remembering what a crucifixion of the nation the 19th century was. I'm sorry, the 20th century. 19th century wasn't much better. But it was in the 20th century that finally the Irish broke out from under the yoke of the English, causing, unfortunately, terrible divisions among the Irish, murderous divisions, and you get a picture of them. It's not always easy to understand unless you're familiar with the history, but you can at least see that it was a time of terrible torment, and for women, a time of appalling obedience to a church that was deeply hostile to women's sexuality. So that has, thank God, moved on a good deal. That's not the Irish that will greet you if you fly there, any more than the England that will greet you is Charles Dickens's England, although people arrive still fondly supposing that there will be terrible pea soup, as we used to call it, fogs, pea soupers, no longer. But there are things that are still shockingly the same about both countries. But Secret Scripture is a kind of a review of what happened to Ireland. And in some ways, it's a review of life itself, the life that we all lead, a life led in the dark, unaware of what's really happening around us. That's the nature of life itself, and it's in many ways a kind of a continuation of a play like Oedipus, which also says you think you know what's going on, but you don't. And by the time Dr. Green finds out what the nature of his and Roseanne's relationship and their relationship to John Cain, who was once Sean Keen, Shawneen, that IN on the end, as I wrote recently to Haya, is Shawneen, little Sean. So what their relationship was not illuminated by the light of truth or facts, although I dare say they lived out their lives, at least the men did with as much kindness as they had in them, and Roseanne was obliged to live it out in the worst torment that men could mete out. So it's an account of the mysteries that life contains. Chaya, who seemed to feel strongly that it's a book filled with religion, which it is, but that I think she felt that it showed that perhaps in Sebastian Barry's view, there was a plan, a divine plan, and it could be seen in this novel. I think I argued the contrary, which was that if there was a plan, it ought to have been a better one than the life that we see in disorder until far too late in this. And knowing something of Barry's other works, wonderful plays, wonderful novels, I'm fairly confident that he didn't believe that all was for the best in the best of all possible worlds. He was not a good Catholic son of Ireland. Those of you who love this book, and I hope that's quite a few of you, maybe one or two of you loved it enough to find a sequel or a continuation or a parallel book, a kindred book called The Whereabouts of Aeneas MacNulty. Aeneas, who crops up, plays a very large part in this book, since he is Dr. Green's father, no less. So he's a huge, though his appearance is extremely brief, it's extremely meaningful. And through Aeneas's life, as you discover about it in The Whereabouts, sorry, that's me jogging my laptop. Aeneas's life is lived largely elsewhere, but you do discover something more about his strange and tortured and very Irish family, the amount of hidden stuff in not only in Ireland. It was a feature of the 19th century and the 20th, and perhaps feature of the whole of human history, even our own century, although I dare say some transparency has arrived compared to what it was like in times of severe religious repression, when the truth wasn't going to be allowed out even for a short walk under severe social distancing. It wasn't going anywhere. It was sheltering in place, the truth, and it was living in lockdown. So I hope you enjoyed it for that reason, the book, as a historical glimpse, which it certainly is, and above all as a psychological treatment of men and women and the unfolding of a wonderful, intricate plot, and above all for the extraordinary beauty of the language. Chaya chooses, when I asked you to choose some favorite passages, sentences, and she chose a number that I'm very fond of. I could not resist the lure of the river. The open sea could not keep me. The salmon lays her eggs on the shingle of the last narrow reaches of her home river, where the water first trickles. First trickles from the earth. Mysterious world. Mysteries upon mysteries. Queens in stones. Or is that stories? No, Queens in stones. That will be Queen Maeve under her pile of stones, up there overlooking the Irish Sea. Overlooking the ocean, in fact, the Atlantic. Rivers gathering underground. And she rightly says, it positively stole my breath. This is Chaya speaking. The rhythm, the siren songs are the words to match the lure of the river, not merely a story, but a poem. And indeed, that is absolutely right about this book. She also quotes a favorite of mine, somewhere in my heart, in the passport of my heart, if you opened it, you would see my real face, unwashed, seared by fire, terrified, ungrateful, diseased, and dumb. What a list of adjectives, she rightly says. Oh, my God. That list of adjectives is really unrivaled. Unwashed, seared by fire, terrified, ungrateful, diseased, and dumb. And she also quotes from the book, among her favorite sentences, perhaps this is our nature, and perhaps unaccountably it is a part of our glory as a creature that we can build our best and most permanent buildings on foundations of utter dust, which is right. I had a couple of other little sentences. I love very briefly that he says, just in passing, the sea stood off in acre after acre of private, dreamy water. Wonderful description of the sea. Not the easiest thing to describe, but something that, as a writer, you're often given the opportunity to describe. Here's another sentence I like. This goes to prove, yet again, that few people stick to the articles of their characters and will keep breaking away from them. This he says so wonderfully in defense of how unexpectedly mean, cheap-seeming people conceive acts of great generosity, and generous people acts of terrible meanness, and how it is that we break away so often from the articles of our character. That, I've always thought, was the gift of the novel to storytelling. There's a limit to which in verse or even in drama you can create the contradictoriness of human beings. That is why Chekhov is such a beloved and great playwright, because he went beyond what even Shakespeare could do, and he did a good deal in that way, and beyond what Sophocles could do, that all three of them were interested in the contradictory nature of individuals. Chekhov, above all, who really made a career out of showing people to be utterly at odds with themselves. And I think the novel is able to do that uniquely well. I think I quoted to you before that lovely sentence, names, names, all passed away, forgotten, mere bird-song in the bushes of things. Is talking about the names in the book, in that book of her father's that she loves. And indeed, it takes rural culture to think of things forgotten as being mere birdsong in the bushes of things. If your life is lived in cities, that's not the first analogy that would come to mind, or the first metaphor. So it's totally appropriate, that. Anyway, so much for that wonderful book. I hope you found it to be so, and I hope you will enjoy whatever it is I have tucked away next for you, which I will reveal at the end of the week, your next reading. But I do believe it is one of the most beautiful novels ever written, and that if you find it of no great appeal to you, that you will find equal solace and excitement in a form other than the novel. There are many others. But as an example of the novel, it is really in the first rank for sheer joyous beauty and ingenuity and profundity and breadth of vision of a nation and of certain individuals in that nation. And if it was no great joy to you, I will seek to find something quite different for us to move on to. Thank you for reading the book, if you did, and please keep safe, be well, send in the quiz if and when you get to it. Thank you very much. Bye.